Hey guys, so pyRevit 4.6 beta 1 is out officially, and this is a video for you guys. I've done a video on it for the just the base users if they want to install and play with it, and you might want to take a look at it. It's a pretty short video. I talk about the updates to the tools, which are very minor, and then the new output window, which I'll explain here again, and also the basically this is the video to talk to you developers most about the core changes and the breaking API changes and stuff like that. So I have the pyRevit CLI tool installed on my machine, and that's the version 0.2.5, which is the sort of like the first official release of the CLI tools. If you don't know what the CLI tool is, on the pyRevit YouTube channel, I have a pyRevit CLI video that I'm explaining what the tool is, and going forward, it's going to be a very important integral part of pyRevit distributions. So I have that tool installed on my machine, and to get the let me actually go in and see what clones I have installed. Okay, let's go and delete and clones delete 46 test. I'm going to go to ctemp just to show you how to get the 4.6 beta. Okay, so to get the 4.6 beta, you can let me go here and okay, so you can use the clone command in the pyRevit CLI tool. Give it a name, give it a 4.6 test, and then use the base distribution to get the base standard tools, define the destination wherever you want it to be installed, and the branch is release 46 beta 1, which is the branch that is on the pyRevit repository and the branch for release slash 46 beta 1 /. So get that on your machine. I'm going to do that right now. You kind of have to wait for it to download, and it would be deployed to wherever folder you have. I'll show you how the folder structure is set up. But right now for the distribution, for the presentation, I'm using the development Git branch that I have on my machine. So if I go to about, I can see the Git commit and the branch and stuff like that. For those versions, when you get it, because it doesn't have the Git repository anymore, you'll see a package icon in here that says, you're on 4.6 beta, what kind of deployment. It tells you it's the base deployment. So yeah, so it's almost done. Let it finish for a few seconds. And you can use the -- debug option in the command just to see how the process is going forward. I'll add more progress bars and stuff like that to this in the future. But basically, that's how it's deployed there. And if I go, say, pyRevit clones, now there's a 4.6 test, which is, see, it's non-git. It's a deployed from archive, basically. So let me actually change the view palette that I have to this so it's easier to see. Deploy base, path, blah, blah, blah. It's there. So 4.6, I'm going to go inside it, bin, extensions, pyRevit lib, side packages, only the stuff that you need. The pyRevit file is important, and the pyRevit arguments that we talked about shows that it's been installed from that branch. So we get it into your machine, and you can say pyRevit attach 46 test to installed Revits. And oh, sorry, you have to specify the engine also. 277, I'm going to use the engine 277 because that's the standard. And it's compatible with everything else. For this video, because I'm using the my dev, can't find it, let's just use this. I'm going to reattach my dev 277 to my Revit, just because I'm using that for the presentation. Okay, anyway. You download it like this, you clone it basically on your machine, and you attach it, and it's good to go. It can sit alongside all the other branches and stuff like that. And you can create like a small batch script for yourself that says, pyRevit detach and attach and stuff like that. And you can switch between different deployments that you have in your environment. So let's talk about what has changed inside the pyRevit 4.6. First of all, the new engines selector system. So if you go under settings, the pyRevit core, the rocket mode is activated by default. And then there's a whole new section for selecting the active engine. Standard by default is 277. Make sure you use that to attach your Revits to the pyRevit because it's compatible with Revit Python shell. But if you want to play with it, if you don't use the Revit Python shell and you want to play with all the improvements into 2.278 and the 279 release candidate number one, these are also included. You can change it and reload and close your Revit and open it again, and it would reload using a different engine. And also the 273, which is the for backward compatibility with Dynamo BIM, is also included. There's no Dynamo BIM compatibility mode anymore because you can just select the engine from here. That's as far as all the the settings has changed. There are a couple of other stuff that we talk about it that I'll show you as we go through the videos. Um, that move. And then I've shifted to, obviously, as you can see, I've shifted to using Visual Studio Code for development in pyRevit. Hence, there's a shift. I used to use Atom a lot, and then I talked to a couple of my friends, and they realized, they told me that VS Code is a lot faster and better and whatnot. So far, I'm liking it a lot. And then one of the things that it affected me, the workflow, was that I started using PyLint as the linter. So all the code base has been shifted to use PyLint. Just that's only if you can see like PyLint disable errors and stuff like that if you walked into the code. There's no PyLlama directives anymore. Support for executing Dynamo scripts. So if you go inside pyRevit, if you want to see it, go under extensions and activate the pyRevit dev tools, and it would load this dev package for you. There are a couple of tools in this that they're test tools, but I'm going to show you. I'm going to basically use them for showing how things work with the new changes. So under unit test, there's a new test tool. It's called Test Dynamo BIM. Hold Alt and click on it, and it takes you to the bundle. But when you go inside the bundle, you see there's a Dynamo script inside it. There's no Python script anymore. Inside these tiny Dynamo BIM. So what basically pyRevit allows you to do is to throw in your Dynamo scripts inside a bundle, just like any other bundle. This is Test Dynamo BIM push button. You can still define the type of button that you have, push button mostly, and then you can throw a Dynamo script inside it. And when you click on it, basically pyRevit uses the Dynamo engine that is installed on your Revit, and it would run that tool for you. So that's a very good way of distributing all your Dynamo scripts to your staff. You can create tools in your extension and just throw in the Dynamo scripts. If you hold Control and click on it, it'll open the Dynamo GUI interface as well for debugging and stuff like that. So that's also another add-on. And obviously, alt clicking on it will take you as usual to the alt clicking on it will take you as usual to the script file. So that's pretty much it. The only there are two things that are associated with this. Is that first of all, if your script is using dependencies, you have to install those dependencies inside Dynamo. So however your distribution of Dynamo works, it's still the same. If you're deploying it to people and make sure the extensions are installed for Dynamo, just you have to keep using that, because pyRevit is mainly making it easier for you to distribute to tools. Instead of using the Dynamo player and whatnot, you can just put it inside a Python tool and just organize it nicely in palettes and panels and stuff like that, and just ask the user to run it. And anytime in the future, if you decide that, okay, I need to extend the capabilities of this tool, you can just replace it with a Python tool without any changes to users' experience, basically. So that's a great feature. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that if you have multiple versions of Dynamo installed on your machine, when you run that tool, pyRevit's gonna ask you that I don't know which one of these do you want to use. You run your Dynamo once, pick that engine, because it asks you, the Dynamo asks you. I still haven't figured out how to pop up that window. The Dynamo will ask you for which engine you want to use, and you click on it. And basically, once you've loaded the engine, let's say 1.3 or 2, that's for that Revit session. It's just that engine that you can use. You can't switch it back to something else because all the DLLs for that session, that engine basically gets loaded. So once you do that, and then from then on, pyRevit will be able to execute the Dynamo scripts without no problems. So that's that. And then this is one of the things that I'll try to spend more time on it to figure out in the future. So when you actually click on the Dynamo script tool, it asks you for the Dynamo version that you want to run it on. But in most environments, in 99% of the environments, you only deploy one Dynamo version because you want to make sure that the dependencies are correct and the versions of the file versions are specifically changed in the different Dynamo, in the new Dynamo version and whatnot. So it's super important to make sure that you have the right Dynamo version installed on your machine. So that's that. And then there's a new assembly binder that I'm using in the pyRevit backend. So let me know if you see any issues associated with your DLLs loading and stuff in your custom add-ons. You might have to, let me show you an example. You might have to change your CLR import to, instead of add reference, to file and path, and just give it the full file and path to that DLL that you want to use. You might need to modify your modules to sort of like, load that if you see any load errors. I have reworked the way the extension.json files work. So previously, I'm using the pyRevit. Let's go back here and then go to gits and then pyRevit extensions. Let's use the pyRevit extensions as an example. So pyRevit had always this sort of like flexibility that you can deploy multiple different extensions inside a folder and throw an extensions JSON in there and define all of them in one single file. Now, this system still is valid. Now you can throw an extension that by example extension.json inside the extension and basically just define that extension object, just like you would do it before. This has the added benefit of sort of like, if you are using single extensions, like for example, for me, if I decide not to include this extension in a deployment, the extension is defined inside the folder. So if the folder is missing, you won't be able to see it in the extensions tool. Otherwise, I would have to, like, if I don't include this, I have to provide a different version of this JSON file that doesn't include the definition for that DevTools. So it's better to start putting the extension.jsons inside your extensions. pyRevit will see it. The changes that you would do will override each other. So if you have the extension here and also you have it defined inside this, whatever you have that's inside this will override the definitions that you have here. That means that you can do overrides for the pyRevit extensions inside the sort of like for the standard pyRevit extension, like pyRevit core as well. Just like before, you would add it to your extension file, you would define that core and do overrides and whatnot. Previously, if you wanted to do it, you had to define all the parameters for the pyRevit core, in here. Now you don't have to define everything. You can only define the stuff that you want to override. Like for example, you don't want it to be, you may want to add like auth users only. You may want to define a set, and I'll show you. Let me actually go grab it from there. I forgot to bring it over here, but let's do it right now. Let me actually do a simple one here. So let's say I want to define the pyRevit core as disabled for all the users. I can just remove all this stuff, keep the name and all the other stuff. I don't have to define everything else. I can just say pyRevit core, because I want to modify that, and I can add auth users and basically provide a list of users like me. Like that's the person that can use this. You don't have to define the rest of the properties for that extension. That's basically all I'm trying to say. You don't really have to define everything else around it. You can just say pyRevit core and provide the modifications that you want to do, which is nice. You don't have to do extra work for whatever you need to do. But basically, I highly suggest starting shifting all this. And then the added benefit is that if you have a single extension that you're deploying to the outside world, you can include the extension definition inside your Git repository, because your Git repository won't include the dot extension. Your Git repository, whatever that's inside it. And when the pyRevit installs that, it creates that dot extension folder and everything else around it. So it's nice that the extension.json is already defined inside that extension. If you want to register your pyRevit, your extension with pyRevit, you still have to send that information to me so I can add it inside the master extensions.json in here, because that's the extension that the pyRevit will look up for extension, the pyRevit CLI tool. But also, if you watch the video on the pyRevit CLI tool, you can add your own JSON files to the pyRevit CLI tool as well to look for your extensions inside your own corporation. Because you don't want to share, obviously, those with me inside this master extension file. This is only for the public. So as you can see, I've modified the pyRevit extensions file to only include the stuff from outside world, the third-party extensions, right? And all the standard pyRevit extensions are defined using the extension that's inside extension.json that's inside the extensions folder. So that's pretty much it. I'll do more information. I'll write an article on it, provide more information on how to set it up and stuff. But I think it's kind of self-explanatory. So added support for local config files. So a lot of us have, well, a lot of you might have multiple different versions of pyRevit cloned on your machine. To be able to, all of these clones, basically, when you attach it to Revit, they use the same configuration file, which is under your app data. In order to provide a sort of like a workaround around it, you can throw in a pyRevit. Well, let's see, app data, and then I go to pyRevit. You can throw a pyRevit configuration file inside the directory, whatever your pyRevit is. It's already ignored in the get ignore, so it won't get included anywhere. But because it lives there, pyRevit at load time will use this configuration as your development configuration kind of thing. So each one of your clones can have its own INI inside it. It's not included in the get and everything else. You can just load from there. And your settings will be basically saved to that. And then revised user config to allow Windows environment variables and extensions. So in the extension definition, let's go back to that. Well, configuration is here. Inside this, the extensions, user extensions that you would want to add like path to it, now you can just say user profile, for example. Profile. You can add environment variables inside it and do the path, whatever there it goes to. So this way you can point to a directory that's user based, and pyRevit will resolve that environment, will expand it to whatever that's folder path is on that machine. So that's that. And then what else? There's an auto update feature in configuration. So pyRevit configuration now includes an auto update. If you activate it, it works only on the Git repositories that you have deployed to your users. But if you activate it, if it sets to true, whenever the user is firing up Revit and pyRevit is loading, pyRevit does an auto update on itself before it actually launches. So it's kind of nice to have it there if you're using a Git repository. This way you make sure that everybody's always updated. And it basically just does a pull from the Git repository. It just pulls everything from the Git repository, reloads itself again while it's loading. So, but the user won't see anything crazy. It's just it might take a second or two more to pull the changes. Obviously, you still have to think about all the if you're making changes to the DLLs and stuff like that inside your inside your extensions. If the DLL is already loaded, then the auto update can't replace that DLL because it's already loaded inside the inside Revit. I've added the pyRevit exe, pyRevit CLI. So pyRevit distribution, basically pyRevit folders, has this whole bin directory now, which has all these DLLs and stuff like that. And it has the pyRevit labs library inside it, which the pyRevit core has actually started using these for features and whatnot, for functionality, like changing the engines, for example. That system is provided in here now. So these DLLs will get loaded, some of them inside Revit when you actually fire up Revit. Revised toggling script icons. There's changes into how you would toggle the script icons if you've ever used it. I've added a bunch of modules like YAML from YAML.net. It's been added to it. Munch, DarkOps, we'll talk about it. There's a Revit.db. I'll do a video completely on this in the future. Once I'm finished with the 4.6 complete updates. And then the DarkOps will talk about it, and which ties into support for command line execution, and import resources have been added, the modules to the standard modules, and that's pretty much it on the new modules. So let's talk about DarkOps. So pyRevit now can include tools that they don't have any visual representation. They don't have any icon in here. They're called no button tools. So I can click on this and go to development extension to show you the test tools. Test command arguments and test command options. They're both no button. So they don't have any buttons in here. So you might ask, how do you run them? Well, you run them through the pyRevit search. So I can say test command arguments, and I can run the tool from here, or test command options. They'll show up here, but not in the tool. So it's good for like the test tools and fix tools and stuff like that you do want to have on user machines, but you don't want them to actually use it. It's a good way of like distributing them there, and just you can use it sort of like more like admin tools and whatnot, more like hidden tools kind of that they obviously will have access to. It's just that it's a little bit hidden. And then in this example for the args, and I can provide an argument and hit enter, and it shows me the help. So the way it works is that let's go inside the arguments. If you take a look at the script, just like in Python when you use the DarkOps module, you can define all the options for that command inside your doc string, the main doc string, and then import DarkOps and do everything that you do around document options and process the options and stuff like that. And pyRevit search will pass on the options that provided into this script when it's running as arguments into that script. For example, the version will show the version, right? So I'm gonna go run pyRevit search, test command args, and I'm gonna say, well, V, master V. So this will print the version for me. That's how the command works. But you can, there's no limitations. You can do whatever you want to do with it. And if you don't want to use the sort of like the options that are provided here, the command optional tool still works, like this standard command options, like the more GUI interface. This works. So because just like any other button that you see, like these, the buttons here, like this, that has a series of options for the command, you can still use these. The only thing is that that button doesn't have a visual representation, so you have to run it from search. So it's just a normal pyRevit command. It just doesn't have any icons. So you run it from here, but you also can have like switches and options, and then it will return the results, which switch is active and stuff like that. So you can do some hidden tools like this that has some configuration options that you can select based on, like, you want to fix something in the model and stuff like that, but you don't want everybody to see these tools right off the bat inside their panels and whatnot. So that's also available, and then that's support for the command line execution that we talked about. There are a couple of improvements to the output window in general. Let's talk about. Let me show you a standard output window. Let's get syspath. So this is the new output window. It looks slightly differently. I'm using the MOHAPS this sort of like library for Windows. It has this really nice feature that you can add buttons and functions into the ribbon, into the top title bar, basically, which I absolutely love about it. And it has a nice, like, feature for PNG icons and stuff like that in the corner. And it's kind of like, it looks much more modern and whatnot. So I started using this, and the icon for this is fully configurable. All this information, all these icons and whatnot are inside the bin library. So if you say window, so output window icon is here. I'll use it and open it in pay. Oh, it's white. Yeah, so that's how it looks like. So you can replace this PNG in your own clones. If you fork pyRevit, you can just change it. And the window icon, it also looks like that. So all the window icons in here, that's where the icon changes, the options icons, basically. So these icons are there. And then the output window uses that icon to load there. You can actually install, I'll show you, but you can change the icon inside your tool as well, point it to a different icon if you need to. But there's some functions in here now that are kind of important. So first of all, the window will show you the version, and you can just click and copy it to clipboard from here. So if you send me a screenshot of the window, I already know what version of pyRevit you're running on. The user information is here. There's a pen keep on top button that you can activate, and the window stays on top. It's really good for like information that you want to play with it and stuff like that. It stays over on top of the window. And if you don't use a multi-monitor situation that you can put this on a different window, you can just activate, click on it again, and it activates the auto collapse mode. So when you do this, it auto collapses. And you can go back on and just, deactivate it again, and it would just go back to normal mode. You can copy all the content to clipboard. You can save all the content to an HTML file. You can print it. This print function obviously existed before. You just had to get it from here, print and print preview on the right click, but now it's easier to use. Or you can open it in a browser. So you can just open it in a browser and use the browser search functionality and stuff like that to go through your content. So these are the major changes about how the output window works. But there's a couple of other options around it. I'm going to use this test output stream to basically demonstrate. There's a feature in it that's called output.freeze, which you can use the output object that you get from the script.getOutput. You can use that, and I'll show you in this script. Well, actually, let me actually open this script right here so we can go to the script and talk about it. So it looks like this. So there's a lot of times that you want to print a lot of output to the output window, but it sort of like makes everything go slower. In order to avoid that, you can just say output freeze, do all the printing that you want to need, and then output unfreeze. And what happens is that the output window will go into sort of like wait mode. So look at here, this is doing the testing on the emojis, and what I'm going to talk about is here. That's what it does. It says preparing results and then testing output freeze. It does this, and once all the printing and function inside that boundary of freeze unfreeze is completed, then it pushes everything to the output window. This error is part of the test. That's not an error. This is just to test how the errors would look like. So this, like I'm printing 5,000 lines to the output. That makes it a lot easier to for the output window to print everything. There's a complete new emoji system in here. One of the breaking functions that I was going to talk about is the emojify output.emojify doesn't exist anymore. So you can remove that from your scripts. The output window, let's use this as an example. I'm just going to clear all the functionality inside this tool and then say print. The output window is by default processing all the emojis. And in order to get the emoji, like you don't know what emoji you want to use, you don't know what emoji code to use, you can go into pyRevit, this new tool that says emojis, just click on it and it'll print you. See, it's using the print results to prepare all the emoji list because it's a big list. So it does that first and then it prints everything to the output. So I want to use, I don't know, Costa Rica, Croatia, that's countries, let's not be specific. Let's do a banana. So I'm going to go here and say inside, obviously you have to put it inside, inside the double, the two colons basically to be able to, that's how you specify the emoji shortcode. So you can do this. So anywhere you're printing an output, your string to the output window that has one of these, it'll be replaced automatically with the emojis. So that's just by default. So when I click on this tool, it prints the banana. And that helps me. All this is happening in the C# backend, so it's a lot faster. All the emojis have been updated and everything else, so you don't have to emojify a string before actually print it to the output window. You can just include it in your string. So everywhere you have an output.emojify, like this, and you have a string inside it, you can just get rid of this output emojify and just keep this string. And it would basically, because the output emojify will actually looks like this. So it's a print output emojify like that. So you can just get rid of the output emojify and just keep the string, and it would print correctly. So that's that. And then the script get configuration. So this script module now has this is a test script that we talked about. There's a couple other things that I want to talk about as well, but let's do the script module and just say get config. So the script that get config that would allow you to create sections for your script configuration previously would always default to your script name and it would create that section. Now you can specify that section name inside the configuration files. And when there's a new option for resetting the configuration, you can specify that section as well. So you can customize the section name of the configuration file, whatever that section name here is in the configuration file for your scripts. You can customize that to however you want it to be for a script. This is very helpful for a series of scripts that share the same settings. This way you can just say, I don't know, point cloud tools, and you can set this section correctly so all of them can read the same sections. It doesn't default to the name, to the class name of that tool anymore. Well, it still defaults to that, but you can specify. So that's a nice change for tools that share the same configurations. And then add test compile code from IronPython. So I have a module in here inside the miscellaneous test that says test IronPython compile. If you click on it, you can see that there's a IronPython compile test. That's a Python script that this main script will compile into DLL and then load it back into the tool. So you can compile. It basically shows you how to compile your Python scripts into a C# DLL and then use it inside your tool. That helps you with like faster loads. And then if you don't want to see other people your code and whatnot, you can just do that. And then when you click on it, it sometimes misses the load. But if you compile, it says, compile the DLL, module already works, the function, it tests the function that's inside the module and a type that was defined inside the module. Take a look at the script and see if, I've gotten questions on it. A lot of people wanted to do this, so I've added that test in there too. And then the custom script section and reset config that we talked about. There's a new script inside the basically pyRevit, which I've used the toast64.exe tool. It is inside the pyRevit bin library. Let's super type that toast64. It's used to create toast notifications on Windows 10. I'm having some trouble with it. It works on some systems. It doesn't work on some systems. So in this one, on my virtual machine, somehow it doesn't work. I have to figure out why. Sometimes it shows me the notification, sometimes it doesn't. But basically, how it works is that I've added this functionality inside. I'll try to debug this and figure out why it doesn't happen. But basically, it's inside the forms. You can just say forms toast and then give a sort of like hello world message that you want, the title, the app ID, the action for the click, and then all the other actions that you want the buttons to show on it and whatnot. And what it does is basically toast64. It's written in Go, so it might have some problems with this. It works on some systems. Not always. It basically shows you a toast notification like this on the side of the window that, there's buttons on it, and if you click on the toast, it does something. So it's a pretty good system for notifying the user of some activity without really blocking their view. I'll try to fix the issues that are associated with the actual toasting. I don't know if it's Windows related or the Toast64 module related and stuff like that. We'll figure it out in the future. So that's also there. The infrastructure for it is there. And then there's a new system for sort of like enabling and disabling the three main configuration tools in pyRevit: update, extensions, and settings. So these settings now exist in the configuration file. User can update, user can extend, and user can config. So if I set the user can config to false, and if I reload my pyRevit, pyRevit will not have the settings button anymore. Same thing with extensions and same thing with the update. And this feature is also available, this configuration basically is also available through your pyRevit CLI tool. So you can say config, user can update, yes or no, user can extend, user can config. So you can just do that. So I can say now just to fix my pyRevit, my deployment configs, user can config, set it to, well, yes. And it would fix my configuration file back to true. Here, mouse doesn't work today. And then I can reload and see the tools. Okay, so that's pretty much it as far as these new changes go. There's one thing that I want to mention. So the break-in API changes. We already mentioned Emojify. The select title block function, the forms.select title block that would allow you to select a title, ask the user to select a title block, will now return the ID of the title block. And the select from checklist, if you have used it inside your tools, which is also from the forms module, so it would do like forms, select from checklist, that doesn't exist anymore. It's been replaced by select from list. The select from list was available before. It's just that I've extended its functionality to sort of like be automatic. So if you say multi-select on that, let's go to, sometimes this mouse doesn't work, I apologize. If I go to pyRevit documentation, see if I have the development here. I want to go to forms, well, not here, actually, effective output input. So this, the select view, select sheets, select revisions. Select from list. That's the select from list. So it has the select from list has two modes now. It could, if you give it a list of options and it's single, it lists the like this because you can only select one of them. But if you specify multiple as an option, then you'll get, it will show you a list of items with checkboxes because you can select multiple different options. And the documentation will be pushed to the to those to the documentation file. But basically, let's see if I can find it here. Yeah, select from list. So I can say multi-select is one of the options. So if I say forms, select from list, show multi-select is false, it'll show me just a list of items that I can pick one from. But if I say multi-select true, then it will show me a list of items that it has a checkbox. And you kind of have to define your option as a subclass of the forms, the template list item, and define the name property because you can throw any kind of stuff in this. Like for example, you want to say select a bunch of sheets in there. You can throw the sheet objects inside your option and then just define how to show that name inside the window. So like you can define, like in this case I want to say sheet number and then sheet sheet. That's a bad example, but basically you can say sheet number and sheet name and define how you want that name to be shown in the window. So that's there. And the last thing that I wanted to talk about is the auth groups. So let's go on my machine and say, who am I? Who am I? Groups. So these are the security groups that my user is part of. One of the best ways to manage user access to certain things inside the Active Directory environment is to use the SIDs, the security group identifications. So the extension system now has a way of defining this. I'm going to go and play with my pyRevit dev extension definition file. So I'm going to go pyRevit extensions that dev, and I'm going to open this, the extension definition file. And instead of, you had the auth users before. Now there's a new option for auth groups. And I can say this user can access that tool, this user group. And let's say I add something else to it. So when I reload, see that it doesn't reload. So I'll take that extension away from me because I'm not authorized to use it. And this is part of your extension, so it's sort of like controlled inside your extension. If I add that user, that use authorization group that I'm part of, and reload, now that part of it, let's see if the number is correct. 8192, is that the one that we copied? S116 8192. 116.8192. I don't know, there might be something wrong with it. I'm going to test it, but it should work. Because I'm part of that group, let's see, is this the user? Let's try something else. Okay, yeah, that's something to do with an SID. The way we copied it. So now it loads because I'm part of that security group. So that's a very good way of, instead of like having an auth user in here and try to list auth users and then try to list all the users that would be allowed to use your script, you can use this to manage your IT environment. Just tell the IT that these people are the core developers, or they're the ones that are allowed to use this specific set of tools, and just manages through your sort of like IT admin environment, and then just add the user, basically ID to that, SID to that user grouping here, and you don't really have to modify it inside your extension anymore. You can just control it through your Active Directory environment. So that's also available in the new version, 4.6. I'll do a full video on these, full documentation on these later. this was one of the biggest things that I wanted to do to sort of like specify and I'm sorry, help and simplify the distribution model for the for all the pyRevit users. And this 4.6 was really important to me. That was a big push to like add all these options and create the pyRevit CLI tool and make the pyRevit easier to deploy and easier to update to people. So from now on, I can just actually start focusing on the tools and the documentation and everything else that I have been wanting to add to pyRevit for a long time. So hopefully the development of the pyRevit will be smooth from now on. If I use, for the sake of the presentation, don't say, no, just close this. I'm going to attach the clone that we made, attach the for test to Revit, and then reload it again, just to show you how the about window will be different. So instead of using my Git repository, it's actually loading from the C, the clone that we made at the start of this video, C temp, and for this 46 test, it's loading from here now. And just so you know, the engines are kind of like defined in this pyRevit file. So if you go inside it, I'm actually going to open it in the VS Code. And then if you want to play with this file, it's a TOML file. So just do Control P language, change the language engine, change it to TOML, and it would color code it for you. Syntax highlighting. And then, so yeah, you can see under the engines, each one of the engines is defined as its own separate extension. And it has compatibility for like what other products is compatible with. So it's know that Dynamo is compatible with it and stuff like that. So I'm trying to use the pyRevit file as the configurator for the pyRevit deployment. That way to basically describe what is available inside that pyRevit deployment, where the engines are, and like all the other stuff, what kind of like core development options are available and stuff like that. There's a new deployment option, base X, which is the extended base, which also, so the base, if you install it, it doesn't include the pyRevit dev. But if you want to get the base X, it will include everything that's inside the extension folder. It comes with the pyRevit dev as well. So like this one doesn't have the pyRevit dev in here. It just has the cores and tools because it's just the base. It's the smallest pyRevit you can get that has the tools in it. What's the size? About 100 megabytes on your disk. It's about a sixth of what you would get previously with the Git repository, which makes it a lot simpler. And then there's something that I need to show you about the updates, but basically this is it. pyRevit is loaded, everything is in there. If you go under extensions, you'll only see the pyRevit tools in there because the other ones are not shipped with it. And you can go under settings. What did I want to show you here? Oh, I can go under about, and you can see that it says base deployment 4.6 beta. It doesn't have Git branches or all that stuff anymore. So that's kind of new. And I'm going to close this pyRevit 6 extension. So there's this. Whenever you install pyRevit, I'll add this in the future, that it will install this shortcut in your start menu to update pyRevit. It doesn't come with the CLI tool. This is for the master that we installed. I can delete this. I've already removed it. But there are two things that I wanted to show you, and the two last things that I wanted to show you is that how to update this repo. You can use your pyRevit CLI tool. pyRevit clones, update, 4.6, test, and it will update it. And you just hit it and it would go and update it. The command would return right now, so you won't see the update process. If you do want to see it, just do GUI option, and when you enter, actually, yeah, this is something that I have to update. But basically, when you enter, that's how you update it from there. And I'll show you the other update method if you're using the pyRevit CLI that comes inside the package. Let this finish. So if you do GUI, the command will wait until the configuration is basically done. And that GUI, this is not the final interface for this. I'm still trying to figure out how this exactly would work, but I'll show you what happens when the pyRevit CLI is actually inside that repository. So let this finish. The pyRevit CLI that we're using, we have installed it separately, right? So it sits under program files pyRevit CLI. But obviously the pyRevits will get shipped with their own version of this too. So if you happen to have this, the pyRevit that's inside that, and it's say clones update 46 test, and then do GUI, pyRevit will copy the updater outside and it'll show you this GUI. And then when you click update, you see it's sort of like a nicer update process. You see that the folder would go away and it start updating itself. So the pyRevit deployment with the CLI tool that comes in it can update itself if you use the pyRevit CLI inside that package. It copies a pyRevit updater outside to the temporary directory, and then it updates itself from outside. This is not a final version of this. It works, but I'm still trying to figure out the right user right accesses and like if it's running Revit or not and stuff like this around it. So it's there just for you guys to know. And then, so that's there. We'll just wait for it to update. And once the update is completed, it will basically tells you that the update is completed. And you can click on the tool and close the updater. So it's almost done. Basically re-downloads everything and overwrites that folder completely. And it will tell you that if you have running version of Revit, it tells you that please close your sync and close your Revits and whatnot. So the update is completed. You can just click on it and close the window. Same thing here. Everything works. Blah blah blah. So that's towards when I finally fully figure this out, you'll see that shortcut to the update inside your start menu as well. So that would be a quick way of updating pyRevit. pyRevit has this sort of like extra utility that says pyRevit CLI add shortcut. You can, any of these commands that you want to have a shortcut to it, you can define a shortcut using that. So you can say pyRevit CLI add shortcut. Let's say the name of the shortcut. Actually, let me do it in command prompt, because the way that I have to type strings in this sort of like Unix format environment is slightly different. So let's do pyRevit. Let's make sure it has access to it. Okay, pyRevit CLI add shortcut, and then the shortcut name would be the update pyRevit, for example. And then what you want to do next is shortcut arguments. So it assumes that the pyRevit tool is being used, so you just have to provide the arguments. So for the arguments, I'm going to say clones update all. Update all, and then you can provide a description or say, where do you want to create it. All users would place it in the all users start menu. The non-all users would place it in the user start menu. And the way pyRevit basically creates a shortcut to itself. So whichever version of pyRevit you're using, it creates a shortcut to itself. So if I go inside this and then say pyRevit, see there's a shortcut here now. I can open the shortcut and it creates it under programs, pyRevit, and the shortcut would be the clones update all, whatever arguments that you said to this, and that's where the pyRevit executive is. So in the future, pyRevit will use this feature to create a shortcut to itself to do that. So if you want to create different shortcuts for different tools and whatnot in your own environment to update the clones and stuff like that in your distribution environment to your team members and stuff like that, you can just use the pyRevit CLI tool to add a shortcut for the pyRevit update, whichever clone that you're using, or whatever source that it needs to be updated from and stuff like that right there. So that's also another added feature which we ended up adding in 2.4. So that's pretty much it about all the changes in 4.6. Let me know. I'll try to push the 4.6 final soon once I get the installer and everything else figured out. The installer is a much nicer installer. It is the I've gotten a license for advanced installer. It's a kind of a nicer installer generator. I can add like PowerShell scripts and stuff into it to create the files and whatnot that we need. So it's sort of like, it's a nicer environment, but it's a little bit more complex. So there are a couple of things that I need to figure out around it, and especially the uninstall process and how it tracks like the upgrades and whatnot and stuff like that. I have to figure those stuff out. But basically, pyRevit 4.6 beta is in a good stage to be downloaded and installed using the installer that comes with the I'll place online. This basically this pyRevit 4.6.1 installer, which I'll place inside the releases here. You can install it using that, or basically using the CLI tool as we discussed it. And then the last thing, the pyRevit loader design, as you might have seen it on the blog. So from now on, whenever you fire up pyRevit for the first time in Revit, you'll get a notification like this: pyRevit loader signed by me, and the code signing certificate and everything else is provided with the pyRevit loader, basically.